Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven. I'm here by myself for the third time, for the third week in a row. Rabbi Richman and Rena Richman are finishing up their tour in the United States today, speaking tonight in Lubbock, Texas for one last engagement. So, if you're hearing this today, Tuesday, the 5th day of the month of Adar and the 24th of February, then if you have a chance of seeing the Rabbi and Rena, by all means, take advantage. This is the last night they'll be speaking in the States. Then, God willing, they'll be returning to Israel by the end of this week. And next week, God willing, when we do Temple Talk, it will be with the Rabbi back behind the mic in his rightful place here in the studio. And you won't have to listen to old Yitzchak ramble on for 46 minutes. Yaddy. So, as I said, Rabbi and Rena are speaking tonight in Lubbock, Texas. If you want more information about that, you can go to our website, events page, or you can go to our Facebook page, where we've just posted again the information, contact information, etc., etc. This coming Shabbat, parashat Tetzaveh, which is the second of the parashot, which now will bring us eventually to the end of the book of Shemot, Exodus, which deal with the Tabernacle / Mishkan. Again, after all the major events and the upheavals and the miracles and the revelation of God at Mount Sinai, the rest of the book of Exodus just concentrates and focuses very peacefully and humbly on the building of the Mishkan Tabernacle, with the one small exception of the incident of the golden calf, which we're going to be talking about next week. And we're going to talk about it, of course, in the context of the building of the tabernacle, because placing it in that context teaches us a tremendous amount about what it was exactly all about. But that's all for next week. This Shabbat, I said, parashat Tetzaveh, which actually begins in the book of Exodus, chapter 27, verse 20. Also, this coming Shabbat, we read parashat Zachor, the second of the four special parshiot, special Torah readings that we read over the Shabbatot of the month of Adar, leading up to Passover. Of course, 2 weeks ago we read the first of the parashot, which was Shkolim, which talked about the collecting of the half shekel for the purpose of funding the offerings, public offerings at the Holy Temple. And this week, this Shabbat, as I said, parashat Zachor, remember, which is the parsha that we read on the Shabbat preceding Purim. And of course, Zachor is all about remembering to block out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. I'll talk about that in just a moment. We have a lot of themes that are coming together this week, next week, in the parasha, in the season of the year of the Hebrew calendar, and as well as in what's happening all around us in the world. This week's parashat Tetzaveh focuses almost exclusively on the clothing of the garments of the high priest and the other priests. And the end of the parsha gives a preview, really, for Moshe, about the 7-day inauguration of the tabernacle, which doesn't really take place until the conclusion of the book of Exodus. But God is already telling Moses how it should be conducted. And of course, that's to inaugurate the Kohanim into their new roles. Of course, the word Kohen means to serve, to officiate, And the Kohanim are serving on behalf of God and serving on behalf of the people of Israel, a sort of liaison between Israel and God in the Holy Temple. And the priest, and certainly the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, are not elevated or exonerated. Is that the word? Not sure that's the word. Above anybody else. They're not better than anybody else. They don't have a closer connection to God than anybody else, but they are acting on behalf of the nation inside the Holy Temple, representing Israel before God. And a very, very, very important responsibility and humbling responsibility. And it's very, very beautiful how the parsha opens. The first few verses are about preparing the oil for the illumination for the menorah. But then already in a few verses in chapter 28, verse 1, it says, and I'll start with the Hebrew, Hakrev elecha et Aaron achicha vet banav ito mitoch bnei Yisrael achachonoli Aaron Nadav v'avihu Elazar v'itamar bnei Aaron. Now you, bring near to yourself Aaron your brother and his sons with him. From among the children of Israel, Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar, the sons of Aaron, to minister to me, l'kahanuli, that word kohen. The verse says, bring Aaron your brother near to you, hakrev, which actually, hakrev, to bring near, is from the same word as korban, offering, because the offerings, as we will learn, are all about bringing ourselves nearer, elevating ourselves, and bringing ourselves nearer to Hashem. So, if you recall last week when we were talking about the instructions, the very detailed instructions for the building of the tabernacle, the way it was described, the panels, the curtains that surround the tabernacle and that surround the outer court of the tabernacle are all referred to as sisters. Each panel is an achot, a sister, and the word achot from ach, echad, achot means to unite, to bring together, because they all were literally connected one to the other to create an environment, to create a community, to create a place where man and God can meet in a place of heightened presence, heightened divine presence. And many terms were used that things were when the tabernacle was filled, it was tam, which means perfect, which means whole, complete. Tremendous emphasis, linguistically, we could say, in these very technical instructions about how to build a Mishkan and how to assemble it. A lot of words, it's referred to the fact that the tabernacle is not simply a structure, not simply a building, but it's a unifying factor. It's something to bring us all together. And of course, everybody's who gave with their heart and who participated in the creation and the building and the fashioning of all the vessels and the curtains and the tabernacle itself, they all were united in this process. The tabernacle and the Holy Temple are all about bringing the people of Israel together, bringing us together with God, and ultimately to bring all the nations on board as well with Israel and with God. That's the unity. And so when our parsha this week, Tetzaveh, opens up, and a few lines in it says, bring your brother Aaron near to you. It just resonates with such depth and beauty that the first thing that we learn about this new role for Aaron is that it's a role of drawing near to your brother. And that really is the definition of a Kohen, a priest in the Holy Temple, and even more so, Kohen Gadol, the high priest, because he was the man who, through his work in the Holy Temple, could bring people closer through the avodah, through the service, one to another and also closer to God. And Aaron is the perfect man for this job. He was the first high priest, and he was the perfect man. How do we know that? Way, way back, way back, earlier in the book of Exodus, when Moses was still in the desert, Midian, before he returned to Israel after his before he returned to Egypt after his exile, after God had spoken to him in the bush, and Moshe is very nervous. They're not going to listen to me. I can't speak. I don't have proof. Who should I say is sending me, etc., etc. And he's really testing God. He says to God, and I'm reading now in the book of Exodus, chapter 4, verse 10, Moses replied to Hashem, "Please, my Lord, I am not a man of words, not since yesterday, not since the day before yesterday, not since you first spoke to your servant, for I am heavy of mouth and heavy of speech." And then God says to him, who makes a mouth for man? Who makes one dumb or deaf or sighted or blind? Is that not I, Hashem? So go. So now go, I shall be with your mouth and teach you what you should say. And Moses replied, "Please, my Lord, send through whomever you will send." And then it says, the wrath of Hashem burned against Moses, and he said, Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he will surely speak. Moreover, behold, he is going out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will rejoice in his heart. So Moses he's flustered. He doesn't know what to do. He's very nervous about this. He's very, very stubborn, and God is about to lose it, so to speak. And he says, you know what, your brother Aaron, he's a good guy. He's a Levite. He's got a few years on you. He knows how to speak. You know what? He's coming out to meet you. He's going to meet you soon. And when he sees you, he will rejoice in his heart. And the Hebrew is very, very beautiful. V'samach bilibo. He will have simcha, joy in his heart when he sees you. And our commentators, our sages have said that this is the reason why Aaron was the man for the job, Kohen Gadol, high priest, because when he saw his brother, he rejoiced. Aaron loved Am Yisrael. He loved his people. There is a midrash that Aaron would, people would come to Aaron when they're having problems. When a wife and husband were having problems, they would come to Aaron, and Aaron specialized in bringing people back together. And they say he would, talk to the wife and talk to the husband, and he would sort of, relate what one said about the other, but he would sort of smooth things over, round some corners, and thereby give each side, the husband and wife, a chance to really follow their hearts and reunite and be back together, because obviously what was keeping them apart was just, the stuff of life that gets in the way and clouds our thoughts and blunts our feelings toward one another. So basically Aaron specialized in clearing people's minds and hearts of all the dross that we pick up in life and bringing them back together. And of course that is the same purpose of the Holy Temple and the service in the Holy Temple. So Aaron was the man, and Aaron certainly rejoiced in his heart, because it says a few verses later, back again still in Exodus chapter 4, we go ahead to verse 27. It says, Hashem said to Aaron, "Go to meet Moses to the wilderness." So I went and encountered him in the mountain of God, and he kissed him. What did God say? Aaron would be happy to see Moses. Yeah, he was happy. He saw Moses, his brother, who he had been estranged from. Moses didn't grow up in the house. He left Egypt. He was in exile for 40 years. Aaron never lost his love for his brother Moshe. And as soon as he saw him again in the wilderness, he embraced him. He kissed him. This is Aaron. And now in Tetzaveh, our parashat for this week, it's going to find my place again. It says, now, like I said, bring Aaron near to you, Aaron your brother near to you, and his sons. And then it says, in the next verse 28:2, it says, V'asita vigdei kodesh la'Aaron achicha lechavod u'letif'aret. You shall make vestments of sanctity for Aaron, your brother, for glory and splendor. Okay. You shall make vestments, bigdei kodesh, vestments of holiness, of sanctity, bigdei kodesh. For your brother you're going to do this, not for yourself, for your brother. It blows my mind that Torah teachings, the most basic and profound teachings, if you're not really paying attention, they can almost slip by without noticing. What an amazing thing Torah is telling us, that it's telling Moses, but it's also telling us that our responsibility, our obligation is to make bigdei kodesh, garments of sanctity for our brother, meaning we're supposed to do on behalf of our brother. We're supposed to enable them through our actions toward them to be holy. We're supposed to make for them a garment, a vessel through which they can be holy. It's just a very, very profound teaching of really what it's all about in life, and really what all this big to do about the tabernacle, the holy temple, the service inside the holy temple. Well, people say, well, what's that about? It's just some kind of ritual, fossilized ritual. You do the same thing every day, and we can do without it. In fact, for 2,000 years we've been doing without it. What is there to gain there, really? What's the big deal? So, yeah, there's a big deal. The big deal is in how it all affects us, and what its intention is for us. So we do have to pay attention. You can't just sleepwalk through it, because if you sleepwalk through it, you lose it. Yes, intention and the meaning behind all our actions is everything. And guess what? That's a foreshadowing for what we're going to talk about soon, which is parashat Zachor and Amalek, and the message he tried to hand over to us. Going back to our verse, it finishes with these garments that you make for your brother will be L'chavod u'letif'aret, for glory and splendor. Kavod also means honor and respect. So we're making a garment for our brother of respect. We all understand respect. We all want respect. We all need respect. We all pretty much know how to give respect to others. It's very basic. It's a very basic human necessity. We need that in order to unite and to be together and to be brothers. And of course, tif'aret just means beauty and balance and equilibrium and harmony. Imagine what a gift that we can give to one another if we can really make for one another bigdei kodesh, garments of sanctity. Now, the history of making garments in the Torah goes back a long way, because as you all recall, the first tailor, as it were, was God, who made for Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, garments of or, kotanot or, translate as garments of leather or garments of skin, when they left the Garden of Eden, and that was ostensibly to protect them in the world into which they were stepping, into which they were entering. They had been in a very elevated spiritual world, and then when they ate from the fruit of the tree, and they dropped down from that high level that they were at spiritually, they suddenly noticed that they were naked. They weren't suitable for that world anymore. So God quickly clothed them and sent them from the Garden of Eden. And there's a whole lot of midrashic literature about these garments, and one of the threads of midrash talk about these garments as really being the prototype for the garments of the high priest. And there's a whole history, midrashic history, that traces the garment from Adam to Cain to Noach, and I believe, to Lemech and Nimrod, and then to Esav. That was the famous clothes that Esav had, that Yaakov put on when he went to his father for the blessing. And then Yosef was given his beautiful garments from his father Yaakov. And there is a midrashic tradition that this is one and the same garment, or at least the prototype of the garment of the Kohen Gadol. And yes, this is a special set of clothes that are made specially, and it's described in exquisite detail in the parashat Tetzaveh, especially for Aaron, Kohen Gadol, and of course will be worn by all the Kohanim, every Kohen Gadol in every generation. And guess what? It doesn't belong to the Kohen Gadol, it belongs to Israel. And the Kohen Gadol can only wear the garment while he is in the Holy Temple, and he can only do the service in the Holy Temple when he's wearing the garment, meaning the garment makes the man, the garment makes the Kohen. The garment is that article of glory, respect, beauty, harmony, which when a man puts on, enables him to step into the Kodesh, step into the Holy Temple, the sanctuary, and step into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies, and stand before God and represent all of Israel before God. And of course, we'll learn about the 12 stones that go on the Choshen, the breastplate of the garments of the Kohen Gadol. And of course, the names of all the tribes are etched into those stones, because wherever the Kohen goes, the Kohen Gadol, he is bearing all the names of the tribes, meaning all the names of the people and the souls of Israel. And he bears them when he serves in the Holy Temple before God. And he bears them when he asks for forgiveness, and he bears them when there are offerings being made, and when the incense is being offered. And that's the role of the Kohen Gadol. And it all begins with these beautiful, splendid garments made by his brothers for him to wear with respect, honor, and beauty. We're at the end of the first half of Temple Talk. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. Today, the 5th day of the month of Adar, 5775, the 24th of February, 2015. This is Yitzchak Reuven. I'm here alone in the studio. Once again, Rabbi Richman will be back next week we'll have a gala celebration celebrating the rabbi's return to the land of Israel, return to Temple Talk, and it'll be very good to see the rabbi again and to hear from the rabbi again. In the meantime, we're in the thick of things right here. It's parashat Tetzaveh, talking about the garments of the high priest. This coming Shabbat, parashat Zachor as well, reading about blotting out the memory of Amalek as a prelude to Purim, which actually is the following week. The Tanit Esther, the fast of Esther, is the 13th of Adar, which falls out on Wednesday, March 4th. Not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. And that night, Wednesday night, and Thursday, of course, is Purim. So that would be the 14th of it's the 14th of Adar, and that would be the 5th of March. And then Thursday night, Friday is Shushan Purim, when Purim is celebrated in Jerusalem and other cities which were walled cities back in the day of Joshua. We can talk about that next week, but that's the schedule. Parashat Zachor. We've been talking about the garments of the high priest, and there's a certain parallel here between the garments that God made for man, to serve man, when man went out into the wilderness of this world, and now God's commanding man to make for his brother garments for man to serve in this refined and rectified environment of the Holy Temple, or the Tabernacle in this case. And if you recall, last week we were talking about the building of the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, as being the completion and perfection of creation. God basically said to the people of Israel, I'm turning the keys over to you. I made this world and I left the last piece. It's like a puzzle, jigsaw puzzle. I'm leaving the last piece for you to put in. This is it, the tabernacle. And that's why God gave us such precise instructions as how to do it. And once you do it, once you've completed that, you've completed your way back in to that rectified and refined and elevated environment of the Garden of Eden. And so just like you were given special garments when you left the Garden of Eden, now you're fashioning special garments for the return to this parallel to the Garden of Eden, which is the Holy Temple. Now, as we know, in the Garden of Eden, what led to all this debacle that required the ejection of man from the Garden of Eden, that required God to make man garments, of course, was the snake in the tree of knowledge. And that snake, some people say, some of the sages say, is really the source and the predecessor of Haman. Haman, the villain, the antagonist, the villain of the Purim story, who was just another representative of a long line of people who hate Israel just for the purpose of hating Israel. They hate Israel because they want to get God out of this world. And Israel as a nation witnessed it for the first time when on the way out of Egypt, just after crossing the sea, that beautiful miracle that's brought the people together and gave them their first taste of real freedom. Then along came Amalek, and he attacked for no reason. And at the conclusion of that attack, God said that Israel is obligated to always fight Amalek and to blot out his memory. It says at the conclusion of the battle, it says, Hashem said to Moses, and I'm reading back in Exodus 17, verse 14, Hashem said to Moses, write this as a remembrance in the book, and recite it in the ears of Yoshua, that I shall certainly erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. Moses built an altar and called its name, Hashem is my miracle. And he said, for the hand is on the throne of God. Hashem maintains a war against Amalek from generation to generation. So we have a war from generation to generation. That's real clear if you're reading the papers, watching the news today, that Amalek is alive and well, and he may have multiple personalities and a lot of representatives in this world, but it seems like everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, there's an Amalek. There are Amaleks here, our neighbors in the Middle East, and even here inside of the land of Israel, there are Amaleks, and there are Amaleks, of course, in Europe, and there are Amaleks in America, and there just seems to be a lot of people vying for the title of Amalek, not merely in our generation, but right now. It's Amalek time, and that means it is time for Israel to fight Amalek. And what did Amalek do? If we read the portion that we actually read, parashat Zachor, that refers to blotting out Amalek, isn't the reference to Amalek in the book of Exodus, but it's the reference to Amalek in the book of Devarim, the end of parashat Tetzaveh. It's the book of Deuteronomy, and it is chapter 25, and verse 17. Zachort asher asalach Amalek baderech b'tzeitchem miMitzrayim, asher karcha baderech, v'nazev b'cha kol nechashalim, etc., etc. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you left Egypt. Asher karcha baderech, that happened to you along the way. And of course the word kara, to happen, and the rabbi loves to talk about this each year. The idea that things just happen is an Amalekian idea, that things just happen, that there's no rhyme or reason in the world. And that's the idea that Amalek tries to inject into the world, that you don't believe in God. No, there's no God. There's no right or wrong. You know, it's all, what do they call it today? It's pluralism, it's multiculturalism, it's, you know, there's everybody's narrative, you know, is good, and everything is relative. So what I might think is bad might be good, but somebody else thinks it's good. There's no right or wrong in the world of Amalek, which very much resembles the world that is being foisted upon us today by many of our politicians, by the media, and by many professors and pundits and philosophers, that there's no right, there's no wrong, whatever, you know, and anybody finds it right in their own eyes. That's what goes, you know, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. As if an evil in the world can be unharmful to others. Anyway, but it also is karcha baderech, because the word kar, it doesn't only mean likrot, to happen. It also means kar, means cold. And they say that it was as if, you know, the world was on fire when Israel left Egypt, because everybody was watching. And the world saw what happened. They saw that Israel went through the Sea of Reeds, and they saw that Egypt was buried in the sea. And we know that Yitro came along, Jethro, and he said, wow, your God is great. He defeated everybody. And this was the feeling in all the world. And all the world saw, wow, there's one God in the world. And then Amalek comes along, and he says, nah, I don't think so. And karcha baderech, they say it was like, he took there was a vat of boiling water on fire, you know, on fire in its belief and closeness to God, and then he just threw a bunch of ice cubes in it and cooled everything off, and brought doubt into the world, and brought cynicism into the world, and skepticism into the world. And that's Amalek's fight, and boy, you can really hear it and see it and feel it today. Just, you know what, just if you're following what's going on, you know, Netanyahu is going to speak at Congress, and Obama administration is against it, and they're just doing everything under the sun to you know, stick a stick in the spokes, and to make Netanyahu look bad, and to make him look like he doesn't know what he's talking about. And they say, no, we're withholding information. We're not withholding information. He didn't tell us. He did tell us. We don't want to meet with him. We're going to meet with him. We're all going to be out of the country. And now, in the past 24 hours, it's become very clear, apparently, that the things that Netanyahu was shouting about, saying, you know, this is a bad deal, and the government of the administration in the United States was denying. Now they're out there, and it's true. And guess what? That same Amalek instinct to sow the seeds of doubts and confusion in the world. That's what the administration has been doing. There's no doubt about it. There are a lot of Amaleks in the world, but right now the American administration is really topping everybody in its 24/7 attempts to just hide what it's doing, lie about what it's doing, confuse the world about what it's doing. And what it seems to be doing, it's becoming very clear, is that the United States administration is throwing in its lot with Iran and with ISIS and with Muslim Brotherhood, which the father of ISIS, and that seems to be the plan, to enable, ennoble, embolden these forces of evil which just seek to wipe out all mankind, no less than that. And that seems to be the plan. So should Netanyahu speak? Shouldn't he? Is he going to do good? No good? Well, you know what? What would you do? I mean, what did Esther do? When Mordechai said to Esther, somebody's got to talk to the king. Somebody's got to talk to Achashverosh. Somebody's got to tell him that there's an evil plan brewing here. And she was a little nervous and said, well, it's not so simple. Because, well, you know what? If you don't do it, salvation will come from another place. But if you don't do it, who are you? What are you? What are you worth? And what's your purpose here? So, yeah. Whether it does any good or it doesn't do any good, whether it helps or whether it hinders, at this point, and this is an unpaid for, unpolitical message from Yitzhak, yes, I think that it is Netanyahu's obligation as a human being, his obligation as a Jew, his obligation as the political head of the Jewish state to speak, as he points out, to anybody and everyone about the dangers of this agreement that the administration seems so hell-bent on signing. Yes, he really has to speak, and people really need to listen. And again, speaking the truth and not being afraid, that's what it's all about. That's what Torah is all about. That's what our purpose on this earth is all about. That's what will bring the light into the world and bring God's presence into the world. And that, again, is really also the task of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest inside the Holy Temple. Yeah, you're there to do the right thing. You're there to speak honestly before God. You're there to, on the Day of Atonement, to just lay it all on the line and say, on behalf of myself and my family, on behalf of all Israel, please, God, forgive us. Yeah, we've done some bad things. Yeah, we don't always measure up. Yeah, we're human beings. That's the way you made us. And it's that honesty and that integrity that comes from the heart, that comes from the love and the unity that went into the building of the Tabernacle of the Holy Temple, that went to the fashioning of the garments of the high priest, that go into the very service of the offerings and the daily tamid service involving the menorah and the table of the showbread and the golden altar of the incense, etc., etc., etc. All that is for the purpose of unifying the people of Israel in their hearts and in their intention toward God and toward ourselves, and being brothers one to another, because that is the true rectification of all the errors man has committed over the generations. And if we can do that and just stand up straight and proud and respectful and humbly before God, then we are doing what God was hoping for when he created man. So all these themes, like I said, the clothing of the high priest, parashat Zachor, remembering Amalek, and vowing to blot out that memory, and what's going on in the world today, it's all one and the same thing. And by the way, as we know from what we learn in Torah and what the Rambam emphasizes, that blotting out the memory of Amalek, destroying Amalek once and for all, is part and parcel with building the Holy Temple. Because as we read in again in this excerpt that we're reading in parashat Zachor, from the end of Tetzaveh, from Deuteronomy 25, and I'm going to read now from verse 19. It says, "It shall be that when Hashem your God gives you rest from all your enemies all around in the land that Hashem your God gives you an inheritance to possess it, you shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heaven. You shall not forget." Okay, so peace, right? And rest from our enemies in our land is part and parcel. Does it precede, or does it come after, or is it part of the destroying of Amalek? And also, we read in many other verses in the book of Deuteronomy that peace in the land and rest from our enemies is part and parcel of the Holy Temple experience, because we're told in other places that when you leave your home to make your pilgrimage to the temple, to bring your offerings, your first fruits, you don't have to worry about leaving your house and your land behind, because God will protect it, because there'll be peace. So destroying Amalek, building the holy temple, peace, these are all one and the same thing, different facets of the very same intention, again, which is to rid the world of the doubts, rid the world of the fogginess and the skepticism and the cynicism, and just saying, yeah, this is who we are. This is how God created us. We are brothers. We are united, and we want to share this world with God. We're inviting God into the world. We've made for God a tabernacle, a holy temple. We put on our finest clothes when we stand before God, and we unite our hearts before God. And when you do that, if you do it right, there really can't be much room for Amalek in the world, can there? So this is what it's about. And the times that we're living in today seem to be a very propitious times, because as bleak as they look, that really is simply what's on balance here. And this is what, the bleakness is also just the focusing and the becoming clear of all the grayness in the world. And it really, just as parashat Zachor is a prelude to the Purim story and the salvation of Israel, and of course the Purim story is a very, very, very intrinsically connected to the rebuilding of the second holy temple. So yes, the threat that hangs above our heads today for Israel, and not just Israel, I hope you all understand that the Iranian threat and the ISIS threat and the Islamic threat and the nuclear empowerment of Islam is a threat that threatens everybody in the world. It's all becoming clear now for a purpose, so that we can ourselves unite and clear our own heads and redefine and what we're doing here, and go for it, and to really go for it. So yeah, what can I say? Peace is just around the corner, people. Peace and joy, it's all good stuff, and we're certainly going to get a taste of it at the end of next week, Purim time, and hopefully that taste will just be a pre-taste, an appetizer for the good times, the happiness, the peace, and the joy that we will all be experiencing soon, when our enemies are vanquished, when Amalek is destroyed, and we are all together in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. In the meantime, as I said, Rabbi Richmond will be back next week in the land of Israel, which is good news for everybody, and I'll be very, very happy to see my brother. I'll be very happy in my heart to see my brother back here in Israel. And last week, this week, the next few weeks, because all these parshiot, all these readings, and up to the conclusion of the book of Exodus, all deal with the building of the tabernacle and the fashioning of the vessels and the garments of the high priests and of the lay priests. We are having many, many features on our Facebook page. Every day, something to look at, something to marvel at, something to learn about the vessels of the tabernacle, the garments of the high priest. So I encourage everybody to stay tuned, and to you know what? Last week I forgot to mention. Last week we broke 100,000 likes. We have more than 100,000 likes on Facebook. So if you're part of that, stick with us. If you're not part of it, well, get on board, because it's just getting stronger and stronger. It's a beautiful, beautiful testimony to the love and desire of people in this world for God, and for a place for God in the world, a holy temple. And There's so much going on, and we have lots of announcements coming up in these weeks, leading to a Passover, Purim, and then Passover. These are very, very busy times for Am Yisrael, for the people of Israel, and we have lots to share, and we are already working on and planning and preparing for this year's 6th annual International Temple Mount Awareness Day, which of course is on or about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is in just 3 weeks. So please stay tuned. We have lots to share. Thank you so much for being with me. Temple Talk. Once again, next week, Temple Talk. Rabbi Richmond will be back. Thanks again, Temple Talk.